Hey, my name is Hayden and welcome to my third SeaPerch video. I'm going to go over how to waterproof your motors and assemble your thrusters. Here's what you need. 3 12-volt standard SeaPerch motors. The die-cut stickers that came with your SeaPerch build box or electrical tape. 3 35mm film canisters. Wax. 3 propellers. 3 propeller shaft threaded couplers. 3 T-nuts. 3 nylon insert hex lock nuts. Super glue, tools to solder, sandpaper, about 18 inches of 22 gauge red and black wire, a black or red Sharpie, needle nose pliers, a table vise, rubbing alcohol for cleanup or alcohol wipes, newspaper or cardboard to lay out over your workstation, optionally hot glue, a drill and a 3/32 drill bit, and your battery. The first step is to take your motors and determine the positive and negative terminals. There should be a red dot around the positive one. This dot will be covered up in the next step, so take your Sharpie and mark at least one terminal with its respective color. Remember, red for positive and black for negative. Next, you will wrap your motors in electrical tape or with the stickers that came with the build box. Do the ends first, making sure to pull the electrical tape tight like that. And then on the front, like this. Finally, we're going to wrap the middle with one long piece. Again, making sure to pull it tight. Your motor should look like this. Now it's time to solder the red and black wires to the terminals on the motor, matching the correct colors to the correct polarity. You're going to take your 18 inches of red and black 22 gauge wire and cut them into 3 equal length segments. Now use wire strippers to strip off between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of the insulation off of the ends. Now we're going to take the ends and wrap it inside and around the hole in the terminal, like this. Now we're going to solder the wires onto the terminals. Plug in your soldering iron. If you've never soldered before, here's how you do it. You need your hot soldering iron and some solder. What you're going to do is you're going to hold the tip of the soldering iron to the terminal for a few seconds to heat it up. And then after you held it there for a bit, you're going to hold the solder so that it starts to flow over the connection. Your terminals should look a little something like this. You can see the solder connecting the wire to the terminal. As you're soldering, be careful not to let the soldering iron touch any of your tape or the wire insulation. I recommend having adult supervision as soldering can be both tricky and dangerous. Tape up and solder all 3 of your motors. You can also test your battery by touching each of the ends of your wires to the battery terminals, like this. After you've made sure your motors work, gently fold your terminals down using your needle nose pliers, like this. You can even add a little drop of hot glue to encase your soldering connections if you want. Now you're going to take your wires and tie a knot with them. To do that, you're going to put them together, make a hole with them, and feed the end through the hole. And then you're going to try to put the knot as close to the bottom of the wire as you can, just like that. The next step is messy, so get clothes you don't mind getting stained with wax. Also, cover your work area with newspaper or cardboard now. Real quick, we have to prepare the film canisters by drilling a small hole in the top and the bottom using your drill and the 3/32 drill bit. Stick your motor into the film canister to make sure it fits. If the motor shaft has difficulty spinning or doesn't quite fit through the hole, enlarge it a bit. Take out the motor and get yourself a little ball of wax. Put the ball in the bottom of the canister and then smush the motor down on top of it. Make sure your shaft sticks out a bit over 1/4 inch. If it doesn't, remove or add some wax. Finally, thread your wires through the hole in the cap and then smush it down, like that. Remove some wax if the cap doesn't fit on, and do this for all 3 of your motors. Your waxy mess can be cleaned up with your rubbing alcohol, as soap and water does not work too well. The final step is to add your propellers onto the end of the shaft, but first, you gotta prepare these guys. Get your vise and put the threaded shaft coupler into it so that the vise is gripped around the hollow side and the screw side is upright. Tighten the vise the best you can, but don't let the hollow side get squished. Screw the spiky T-nut onto the shaft all the way using the needle nose pliers. Be careful not to deform the spikes. After, slide the propeller right above the T-nut, making sure that this little groove faces downward. Lastly, twist the little hex lock nut onto the end, flat side downward. Tighten with a nut driver if you have one, or simply needle nose pliers. Prevent the propeller from spinning by holding it in place as you tighten the hex nut, and tighten it until the propeller is flush with the flat part of the T-nut. Repeat the steps so you have 3 assembled propellers. Before we glue the propellers onto the motor shafts, we have to roughen the surface a bit. You're going to take your battery, your sandpaper, and your motor. But real quick, we got to clean off the wax off of the shaft here using your rubbing alcohol. What you're going to do is you're going to hold the wires to the battery terminals while holding the sandpaper along the shaft. You know when you're done when you can scratch to the end of your shaft. Once it's done, clean it again using your rubbing alcohol, just to get all the little metal bits off. Once you've cleaned it, try not to touch it anymore, or the oils from your hand will make it hard for the super glue to stick. Put a little dot of super glue on the side of your shaft, and put a little dot on the hollow end of your propeller. Now we're going to put them together. But make sure not to actually touch the end of this shaft to the casing, or it won't be able to turn. Repeat the process of roughening your shaft and gluing your propeller to the motor for all 3 of your motors. Then let them dry overnight. The next day, test your thrusters by holding them to each of the ends of the battery terminals, like you did when you were roughening them. You may have to twist the ends a bit if they won't spin, because the wax may have hardened a bit. That's all, your propellers are done. Watch my video about putting your controller together next. After, watch the one where we put the frame, thrusters, and controller all together. Go check those out, and I'll see you there.